They called it an alliance forged in secrecy, a friendship that would shape decades of covert wars and global intrigue. But behind closed doors, trust was never absolute. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it there? It is always fascinating to see how far the truth travels. Let us dive deep into the untold beginnings of this uneasy alliance between the Mossad and the CIA. In the aftermath of World War II, Israel was a young state surrounded by hostility and desperate for survival. Across the ocean, the United States was constructing a vast intelligence empire led by the newly formed CIA. What connected these two powers wasn't friendship at first. It was necessity. The United States saw Israel as a potential strategic outpost in a volatile region where Soviet influence was rapidly expanding. For Israel, American intelligence support meant life itself. It meant access to technology, resources, and global networks that could help it defend against regional adversaries. The CIA, on the other hand, recognized the Mossad's unmatched access to Middle Eastern terrain, languages, and local informants. It was a trade. Information for protection. Through the 1950s and 60s, the two agencies began a delicate dance of cooperation. Mossad agents provided the CIA with insights on Arab nationalist movements, early Soviet-Arab military deals, and local political currents that Washington could not directly reach. In return, the U.S. offered training, funding, and intelligence-sharing platforms that helped the Mossad become one of the most capable agencies in the region. But this cooperation came with layers of hidden tension. American operatives viewed the Mossad as too independent, too willing to manipulate Washington's policies for Tel Aviv's benefit. The Mossad, meanwhile, believed the CIA treated it as a junior partner, one to be used, but not trusted. Behind every shared file was suspicion. Behind every handshake, a question. In the early years, both agencies collaborated on several high-stakes operations, from intelligence gathering in Arab capitals to counter Soviet missions in the Middle East. But many of these operations had blurred loyalties. Mossad operatives sometimes pursued objectives that served Israel's interests first, even at the cost of U.S. goals. To the Americans, it was a troubling pattern, a partner who played both sides of the game. During the Suez Crisis of 1956, these cracks widened. Israel, Britain, and France coordinated a covert plan to attack Egypt after Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal. And they did it without informing the U.S. The CIA discovered the deception only after it was too late. While the public saw political diplomacy at play, within Langley, the message was clear. Israel was an ally. Yes, but one that could never be fully trusted. In response, the CIA began monitoring Israeli operations more closely, setting the stage for decades of quiet surveillance and counterintelligence. What emerged from this early period was a paradoxical bond. Allies in words, competitors in practice. As the years passed, cooperation deepened, but so did secrecy. The CIA relied on the Mossad's field capabilities in areas like Iran, Turkey, and Lebanon, countries where direct U.S. presence was limited or sensitive. In return, the Mossad gained access to American technology, surveillance systems, and diplomatic cover. Both benefited, yet both knew the partnership was fragile. Built more on convenience than loyalty, the relationship was, in truth, a marriage of shadows, sustained not by friendship, but by shared enemies. For every operation they executed together, there was another. Each side kept hidden, files classified, missions concealed, and intelligence withheld. The alliance worked only because both sides needed the illusion of unity more than the reality of trust. In those early years, the world saw the U.S. It's not about a visit, and Israel as inseparable allies, standing side by side against Soviet influence. But within the hidden corridors of power, the reality was more complicated. It was not friendship. It was survival disguised as partnership. The seeds of mistrust had already been planted, and in the coming decades, they would bloom into some of the most explosive intelligence betrayals in modern history. By the 1970s, what began as cooperation had evolved into a complex web of trust, secrecy, and quiet rivalry. On paper, the Mossad and the CIA were partners. But behind the facade, both agencies were engaged in a silent contest for influence, intelligence, and leverage across the Middle East. The seeds of suspicion planted in the Cold War years had begun to grow roots. Washington increasingly questioned whether its ally in Tel Aviv was truly aligned with American strategic interests, or simply using the alliance to pursue its own. And the Mossad, known for its ruthless efficiency and autonomy, viewed the CIA as both a benefactor and a potential threat. The first cracks became visible during a series of intelligence leaks surrounding U.S. operations in the Arab world. Reports began to surface that sensitive CIA data shared with Israeli handlers had somehow made its way into foreign hands, compromising American sources. Though no public accusations were made, within Langley, the conclusion was whispered: someone in the partnership had crossed the line. The tension reached new heights after the Yom Kippur War in 1973. The CIA had relied on the Mossad's intelligence estimates regarding Arab troop movements, estimates that failed to predict Egypt and Syria's surprise offensive. The Americans were stunned. To many in Washington, it looked like either a massive failure of intelligence or a deliberate withholding of information. The Mossad, on the other hand, accused the CIA of ignoring their early warnings and politicizing intelligence. The result was mutual blame and a deep fracture in what had once been called the closest intelligence bond in the world. Behind closed doors, both sides began running quiet surveillance on each other. The CIA increased its scrutiny of Israeli diplomats and suspected Mossad operatives in Washington. At the same time, Mossad agents reportedly infiltrated American defense and research sectors, seeking to secure technologies that the U.S. was reluctant to share. The message from both sides was unmistakable: trust, but verify. By the 1980s, a series of incidents confirmed the quiet rivalry. One of the most controversial was the Jonathan Pollard affair. A U.S. member, naval intelligence analyst caught spying for Israel. Pollard had stolen thousands of classified documents, including American assessments on Arab militaries, Soviet relations, and even U.S. intelligence gathering methods. When the operation was exposed, the fallout was enormous. American intelligence officials were furious, accusing the Mossad of violating the very foundation of their partnership. In Israel, however, Pollard was celebrated as a patriot. The difference in perception revealed the truth. This was not an equal alliance. It was a relationship of overlapping agendas. Each side was exploiting the other's strengths to pursue its own national objectives. The CIA began to view the Mossad not as an extension of an ally, but as an unpredictable intelligence rival, one that operated with no moral restraint and total devotion to Israeli interests. In private reports, American officials described the Mossad as ruthless, uncompromising, and entirely self-serving. Still, both agencies understood that their rivalry could not become open conflict. The Middle East was too volatile, and both benefited too much from each other's information. The U.S. needed the Mossad's regional reach. Israel needed the CIA's global network. So they maintained the illusion of unity, trading intelligence while concealing their most sensitive operations from one another. In this period, the Mossad launched several covert missions across the Middle East and Europe, often without informing its American counterparts. The CIA's frustration grew as operations conducted under the guise of shared interests began to pull the U.S. into diplomatic crises it had not planned for. Israel's unilateral actions, from targeted assassinations to intelligence manipulation, often left Washington to manage the political consequences. Meanwhile, within the Mossad's leadership, there was little concern about American anger. The prevailing philosophy was simple. Israel's survival justified everything. If the CIA was displeased, it only proved how dependent the Americans had become on the Mossad's reach. The shadow war between these two allies had become a game of deceit and necessity, one in which both sides smiled for the cameras, but sharpened their knives in private. Every piece of shared intelligence was now filtered. Every operation double-checked. Every friendship measured in degrees of risk. By the late 1980s, one thing was clear. The so-called friendship between the Mossad and the CIA was an illusion held together by geopolitical convenience. Trust had given way to calculation, and cooperation had turned into containment. The dawn of the 21st century brought a new kind of battlefield, one without borders, guns, or uniforms. It was the age of invisible warfare, fought not in deserts or streets, but in circuits, firewalls, and servers. And once again, the Mossad and the CIA stood on the same side, at least in appearance. The transition from Cold War espionage to cyber intelligence was not smooth. For both agencies, technology promised dominance, but also new vulnerabilities. In this silent arena, allies could become rivals with a single keystroke. What emerged was a new form of power: digital control, where code replaced bullets and information became the deadliest weapon of all. It was in this new frontier that the Mossad and the CIA deepened their cooperation and their mistrust. Their collaboration reached its most ambitious stage in the early 2000s, with a joint operation that would later shock the world, a digital weapon designed to sabotage Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Though the operation would later be revealed as Stuxnet, its origins lay in this uneasy alliance. For the Americans, it was a chance to strike at Iran's nuclear ambitions without firing a shot. For the Mossad, it was an opportunity to eliminate a regional threat and prove its unmatched capability in covert operations. The project combined the CIA's cyber engineering with the Mossad's intelligence on Iranian facilities, a marriage of precision and secrecy. But beneath the surface, distrust persisted. Israeli operatives reportedly pushed for more aggressive deployment, while U.S. officials worried about exposure and escalation. The result was a virus that spiraled beyond control, spreading far beyond its intended target and infecting systems across the globe. What was meant to be a surgical strike became a warning. Digital weapons do not obey masters. Behind the scenes, both agencies blamed each other. The CIA accused the Mossad of reckless handling and of inserting additional payloads into the malware without authorization. Mossad officials countered that the Americans had underestimated the complexity of Iran's defenses. Neither side accepted full responsibility, and yet both reaped the political rewards of Iran's setback. The episode revealed something profound: that the line between cooperation and competition in intelligence had vanished. In the world of cyber warfare, secrets are currency, and even allies hoard them like gold. As the years passed, the digital alliance continued. But the tone shifted. The Mossad began building its own independent cyber branches, recruiting elite hackers, and establishing cyber units capable of global operations. They no longer needed to rely on the CIA's infrastructure. This independence worried Washington. The Mossad's growing reach into global networks, communications, and even American tech firms raised alarm in U.S. intelligence circles. Reports began surfacing that Israeli technology companies, some with deep ties to the Mossad, had supplied software to American and European governments that secretly siphoned data back to Israeli servers. Though denied publicly, the CIA responded quietly, tightening digital security and restricting intelligence sharing protocols. Cooperation continued, but under stricter scrutiny. What once was an open exchange became compartmentalized. A need-to-know relationship where neither side fully trusted the other's intentions. In the digital age, espionage was no longer about stealing documents or intercepting phone calls. It was about controlling information itself, and in that game, the Mossad had learned well from its American counterparts. By mastering cyber infiltration, misinformation, and covert surveillance, it ensured that no matter what the U.S. did, Israel would always hold leverage. This was the silent phase of the alliance, one where smiles and handshakes masked firewalls and counter-intrusions. In the press, the U.S. and Israel remained closest allies. In the servers and data centers, however, they were cautious adversaries, constantly testing each other's defenses. By the late 2010s, digital espionage had replaced the old cloak and dagger tactics entirely. The CIA continued to rely on Israel's on-the-ground human intelligence in the Middle East, while the Mossad leveraged U.S. cyber technologies and global reach. Both claimed victory, but neither trusted the other to play fair. What began decades earlier as an intelligence partnership had now evolved into a cyber chess match, one where both sides knew too much, shared too little, and trusted no one. The partnership between the CIA and the Mossad has long been portrayed as unbreakable, a symbol of Western unity and shared intelligence might. But behind the photo ops, joint operations, and political statements lies a different story. One of deep suspicion, silent betrayals, and hidden rivalries. Both agencies were born from the same logic: survival through secrecy. Yet that very secrecy has made them incapable of full trust, even with each other. What began as cooperation against Soviet influence evolved into a network of mutual exploitation. The CIA needed the Mossad's reach across the Middle East, its human assets, its regional insight, and its ability to act where America could not. The Mossad, in return, needed American funding, technology, and political cover. But alliances built on necessity are never equal. Over the decades, the Mossad has operated as both ally and infiltrator, sharing intelligence with one hand while quietly gathering leverage with the other. There have been moments when Israeli actions directly endangered American interests, like covert operations in neighboring countries without consultation, or intelligence manipulation to push foreign policy agendas, and surveillance on U.S. targets, including diplomats and tech contractors. Each time the U.S. discovered traces of the Mossad's overreach, political pressure smoothed the scandal. The alliance, we are told, is unshakable. But within intelligence circles, a different phrase circulates: trusted only to a point. The truth is that both agencies view the other not as a friend, but as a necessary rival, one that must be monitored, managed, and occasionally deceived. The CIA has used its global influence to limit Israel's independent operations in certain regions, while the Mossad has exploited Washington's political dependence to act without consequence. It is not friendship. It is mutual containment dressed as cooperation. In recent years, this unspoken rivalry has deepened in the digital realm. The Mossad's expanding cyber capabilities and influence over private security firms have given Israel enormous reach inside systems worldwide, including those of its allies. Meanwhile, the CIA's growing mistrust has led to quiet restrictions on intelligence sharing. What once was an open exchange has turned into a cautious balancing act. And yet publicly, both sides continue the performance. Smiles at press briefings, joint press statements, and endless declarations of unity. The alliance remains. But what kind of alliance survives only through secrecy and silence? The uncomfortable reality is that the Mossad and the CIA are both allies and adversaries, bound by shared enemies, but divided by ambition. They cooperate to control threats, but compete to control information. Their friendship is not built on trust, but on power. Behind every intelligent success, there is a silent calculation: who benefits more, who learns more, who controls the narrative. And in those questions lies the essence of their relationship, one that defines modern espionage itself. As the world watches the headlines and sees only partnership, the real war continues unseen, fought not in the name of freedom or democracy, but in the pursuit of dominance. The alliance remains, but it is an alliance of shadows where no one truly knows who the enemy is. What do you think? Is the Mossad truly America's friend, or has the alliance been a carefully crafted illusion from the start? Tell me your thoughts below. Your perspective might reveal what lies behind this friendship of secrets.